What is up, everybody? My name is Logan Sharon, and welcome to my very first video on the channel. Now, one thing I did want to talk about before we get started into things, I did want to get this done a lot earlier, because we're already in 7 weeks in the NFL, and it's already Halloween season. But to be honest, it's been hard changing from high school to not being in high school and getting my life started. So a little bit of mixed emotions have just been bothering me throughout the last few months. And it's better late than never, so here I am. And this has been my long life dream of making football content for all you football fans around the world, to hopefully be making fun and entertaining content to all you football fans all around the world. To see, hopefully you enjoy it all, because I absolutely love talking about football. It's one of my loves of my life, so hopefully you enjoy it. One thing you will already notice about me, yes, I'm a New Orleans Saints fan, and yes, I have been through hell the last few years watching the Saints. But never mind that, I have always loved watching football. I have always loved watching the Saints. I've always loved watching the Niners because my family are a bunch of 49er fans, so I get to see how they've been doing, despite them being a little disappointing in the process, just because how the hell with that squad do you not win a Super Bowl yet? Like, come on. All right, so what we're doing today is I am giving you my reactions from all the games this week to recap what has happened and to basically give my thoughts of how these games went and what could have went wrong and what could have went better. So I hope you enjoy that. So before we get started, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe so we can get this video and this channel up and rolling, so I can try to make it worldwide, so I can share it to fans all around the world, not just the locals right now. So we can try to get this video and this channel to go get bigger and bigger by the minute. So now I've got all that covered, let's get started. So the first game we got, Thursday Night Football, we've got the Denver Broncos at the New Orleans Saints, and wow, what an ugly game by the Saints, man. Like, I don't even know where to begin. Our offense struggled like hell. Our offensive line couldn't get anything going. And we just looked like a mess. Now going to 2-5 in the season, man. I did not think it would end up like this, because we were on a 2-0 run, and then now we've lost 5 straight games. It's just been an absolute mess. Now, going on to the Broncos, one thing I will say, despite Bo Nix not throwing the best ball, I will say I am impressed with them this year. I had them being one of the worst teams in football. I had Bo Nix doing even worse than he is now, despite not being that good right now. But you know what? Their defense has been amazing, and their offense has been able to produce a little bit to keep them in the game. So, yeah, they've been a pretty solid team so far this year. They've been overperforming, and I bet Broncos fans are really happy to see that. Stat-wise, there's not really much to talk about other than Spencer Rattler only having 172 passing yards and Alvin Kamara being absolutely horrible with only 7 carries and 10 rushing yards. And our receiving room was a little weak because we had Chris Olave out with a concussion, and then Rashid Shaheed was out with a knee injury, being out for the year. That obviously sucks. But our leading receiver was Cedric Wilson Jr. with 6 receptions and 57 yards and a touchdown being towards the end of the game. So at least he had some solid stats, but it doesn't really mean much for this game because the Broncos were already ahead by a bunch at the time. And yeah, our defense got absolutely steamrolled, not getting a single sack or an interception. So it's not a good look for us at all. We already had one of the worst defensive performance of all time last week with our team. And then now we somehow played even worse. Now, when you look at Bo Nix, yeah, he didn't throw the best. He only had 16 completions out of 26 attempts. He only had 164 passing yards. He's still been able to win games. So, as a rookie in the NFL, that's always been great to see. Not having the flashiest stats like Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, he's been able to win games for his team, especially for the Broncos, man. That's still impressive. Javonte having possibly the best game so far this season. Had 14 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns, being an absolute threat to the Saints this game. And again, for the Broncos, not much of a threat receiving-wise, just like the Saints. Their main leader in receptions was Troy Franklin with 5 receptions for 50 yards. So, yeah, not much to see on the receiving side, but their defense absolutely bullied the Saints, with the Broncos defense having a total of 6 sacks on Spencer Rattler But not even though not allowing a single pick, that's still great seeing from the Broncos, putting a lot of pressure onto the Saints offensive line. So as a Broncos fan perspective or other fan perspective, great game by the Broncos. They've looked really solid the last couple weeks. And as a Saints fan perspective, you guys got to get your shit together, man. We're going to keep losing in games if we keep playing like this, man. We got to get this figured out. Moving on, we got the last London game of the season. We had the New England Patriots at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this was kind of a boring one just because the Jaguars beat the shit out of the Patriots. I honestly did not see that coming. I had the Patriots winning this game by a low score, but a close score. But that's not what it ended up being. The Patriots just could not get anything going. Despite Drake May playing a great game for himself, being his second game of his career. Throwing 26 attempts for 37. Ramondre Stevenson having himself a bit of a disappointing year so far. He was awful. He only had 7 carries for 18 yards, not getting anything going on the ground. And receiving was decent. Hunter Henry's having a very quietly good year, in this game having 8 receptions for 92 yards, and then Jermichael Hasty having 5 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. And then KJ Osborne having 2 receptions for 26 yards and a touchdown. So receiving was able to get something going, but not at the right times. Now, when you look at the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence had himself a good game. So you got that to look forward to, hopefully, going against other teams. So Trevor Lawrence throwing for 15 completions for 20 yards, for 20 attempts, 193 passing yards, and a touchdown. That's pretty damn good, despite how bad he's been this year. Travis Etienne was out for this game, so you have Tank Bigsby coming in to step up, and he's been doing that. Having 26 carries for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been absolutely great. If I'm other teams, I'd be watching out for him in the future to see if you can try to make a trade for him, because I think he could be a solid back one day for a starting team. And then when you look at receiving, I think Brian Thomas Jr. might have had himself one of the best games so far. Not yardage-wise, but production. He had 5 receptions for 89 yards and a touchdown, not even being close to the other receivers for the Jaguars, making himself a name in that game. That was great to see. And despite the Jaguars not putting too much pressure into the Patriots' offense, not having any interceptions, they did have 2 sacks, one by Devin Lloyd and another by Trayvon Walker. Now, one thing I will say about Trayvon Walker, like, he doesn't have that pizzazz. Like, I was the number 1 overall pick in the draft, man. Like, don't mess with me. While you got guys like Trevor Lawrence, who's been struggling, you got Joe Burrow. Hell, you got Kyler Murray making some plays, who was a first overall pick. And they felt like first overall pick worthy, but Trayvon Walker so far just hasn't. So nothing against the man. He's been great, but that's just my take on it. So, yeah. So, it was a pretty boring game in London, but the Jaguars got the win, and the Patriots are tied with 2 other teams for the worst record in the league. So, I mean, at least we'll get a high draft pick. Next, we've got, in my opinion, the best game out of all these games this week. The Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings, and this was a showdown for the NFC North. Probably the best division in the league right now. So this was a great one to watch, and man, both teams played great, but the Lions came up the winner, and in my opinion, they are the number 1 team, in my opinion, to go to the Super Bowl. Going to the Vikings first, Sam Darnold, he played a good game, had 22 completions for 27 attempts, had 259 passing yards, a touchdown, and a pick. So he was pretty good. Aaron Jones on the ground was absolutely great. He had 14 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. He was giving the Lions defense a little bit of trouble during this game. And then the Vikings receivers, you got Justin Jefferson with 7 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Naylor with 4 receptions for 76 yards. And Jordan Addison with 3 receptions for 66 yards. So the Vikings receivers were able to put up pressure against Detroit. And then the Vikings defense, being the Vikings defense, has been absolutely great, putting up pressure against these teams. 3 sacks in total, 2 of them being from Andrew Van Ginkel. Man, he's been really underrated this year. So if you look at the Lions here, Jared Goff still putting himself in the MVP conversation, in my opinion, having 22 completions for 25 attempts, 280 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's been playing absolute great football and the best football he's played in his career so far this year. David Montgomery did get hurt in a point in this game, but he did come back. That's great to see. But Jahmyr Gibbs had a great day, having 15 carries for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was absolutely a threat on the ground. And then when you look at receiving, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown being just the wild factor on receiving. Nobody else was close, having 8 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs was second with 4 receptions for 44 yards, but no other receiver was close to him. Not even Jameson Williams. He got injured too, so he didn't get that much production. But Amon-Ra, man, he's been absolutely amazing this year as always. Now, if you look at the Lions' defense, they have been able to put up pressure against the Vikings. They got 4 sacks in total and an interception by one of the main candidates for Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion, Brian Branch. He's been absolutely amazing this year. Now, one thing I forgot to credit about the Vikings is their kicker, Will Richard, having 11 points. So without him, it would have been a lot harder to win this game. So you never want to leave out the kickers, man. I feel like it's a little unfair. So, yeah, great game, but the Lions came up on top, and right now they're looking like my favorite to win the Super Bowl. So, yeah, go Lions. Moving on, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the Buffalo Bills, and this is exactly what I predicted it to be, a complete ass-kicking by the Bills. So, yeah, the Titans offense, they struggled like they have been all season. Mason Rudolph got the start instead of Will Levis. Mason Rudolph had 25 completions out of 40 attempts. Not that great. 215 yards, a touchdown, a pick. So he couldn't really get anything going completion-wise, but he did throw the ball a little bit, so not too bad. When you look at rushing, Tony Pollard has been underrated this year, but he did not have his best game this game. He had 16 carries for 61 yards, so as much as he's been absolutely underrated this year, this wasn't his best game of his season so far. And then when you look at receivers, please butcher this, Jikwanzium Okwango. But if I had to defend the Titans a little bit, I would say he has not been as good as he usually is. So I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit of mix on that one. But Titans fans, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think. Now, when you look at the Bills, Josh Allen obviously playing a great game as he always has been. 21 completions out of 33 attempts, 323 yards, and 2 touchdowns, having himself a great game. Rushing was led by Ray Davis with 5 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. And then James Cook, even though only having 12 carries for 32 yards, did get a touchdown. So both running backs got a touchdown in this game, so that's good to see. And then when you look at receiving, Keon Coleman played probably his best game so far this season with 4 receptions for 125 yards. And then you got the newly acquired receiver, Amari Cooper, with 4 receptions and 66 yards and a touchdown. So that's great to see. The Bills receivers will be a little bit more of a threat now that Keon Coleman sparked a little bit, and then now you got Amari Cooper. So that's great to see for Josh Allen. And then the Bills defense having a total of 3 sacks, not a single pick. Oh, wait, my bad. They did have a pick. That was DeMar Hamlin. That's awesome. And then when you look at the kicker for the Bills, Tyler Bass had 10 points. So that's great to see from the kicker. And yeah, Bills absolutely beat the shit out of the Titans, and they are sitting 5-2 right now. And then, yep, the Titans are 1-5. They're not looking too good, but the Bills are sitting nice right now. So hopefully they'll keep going and sit well in the AFC. Next we got one of the most boring games of the week by far. Was the Miami Dolphins against the Indianapolis Colts. This was not a fun one to watch, especially from the Dolphins side, because they struggled like they have been without Tua. Looking at the quarterback, Tyler Huntley had only 7 completions out of 13 attempts for 87 yards and a touchdown. He did get hurt some point in this game. So, lo and behold, they had Tim Boyle coming in to get the start over Tyler Huntley when he gets hurt. Having 8 completions out of 13 attempts and 74 yards. I forgot that man was in the league, man. Looking at rushing, it was a little lousy, but still a little good. Devon Achane having 15 carries for 77 yards, and then Raheem Mostert having 11 carries for 50 yards, having a fumble in that game. That's not great to see. And then receiving was led by Falcons legend Jonnu Smith with 7 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown, while the other receivers absolutely struggled. Tyreek Hill only having 1 reception for 8 yards, man. Despite him not having a quarterback, man, I don't know what's been going on. He might want to consider getting traded. I don't know. And then the Dolphins defense did absolutely nothing, so it was pretty tough to see for a Dolphins fan. Now, looking at the Colts, Anthony Richardson did make the start this week, but he did not play his best ball. He had 10 completions out of 24 attempts for 129 yards, not a single score. And then when you look at receiving, you got Michael Pittman leading with 3 receptions and 63 yards. And then you got Adonal Mitchell with 2 receptions and 30 yards, and the rest just weren't that good. The receiving just wasn't great outside of Michael Pittman. Now, when you look at the Colts defense, only 2 sacks in total of the day, one of them being by Latiu Latu. He's been pretty damn good as a rook this year. And then one thing to note for the Colts, their kicker Matt Gay had 10 points, being one of the main reasons why the Colts won this game. So yeah, boring-ass game, but the Colts got the win, and they are 4-3, so they're sitting pretty decently in the AFC South. And they do play against the Texans, so we'll see how that game goes. Next, we've got the Seattle Seahawks against the Atlanta Falcons, and man, the Seahawks put on their big boy pants and got the job done in Atlanta. Rushing was led by Bijan Robinson. I will say, out of the last 2 games, it's been nice to see them using Bijan more because he's absolutely great. 21 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown, so he was great. And then receiving was led by Kyle Pitts with 7 receptions and 65 yards. I mean, you got Drake London with 6 receptions and 63 yards and a touchdown. And then the Falcons defense just couldn't get anything going, only having 1 sack by James Smith-Williams. But other than that, they just couldn't get anything going. But when you look at the Seahawks, man, they got the job done. Geno Smith having 18 completions out of 28 attempts, 207 yards, and 2 touchdowns, having a good game. Rushing was led by Kenneth Walker with 14 carries and 69 yards and a touchdown. He was pretty good. And then receiving was led by DK Metcalf, having 4 receptions and 99 yards and a touchdown. Pretty damn good. Kenneth Walker had a receiving touchdown. One thing that sucks is DK Metcalf did get hurt in the point of this game, so hopefully it's not something serious because DK has been pretty decent this year. And then the Seahawks defense being great, having 3 total sacks, 1 being by Leonard Williams, and having 2 total interceptions, 1 being by Kobe Bryant and the other by Julian Love. So the Seahawks defense has been able to get the job done, so that's great to see. So yep, both teams are now 4-3, and the Seahawks might have redeemed themselves because they were in a rough spot earlier. Next, you've got a pretty good game here. You got the Houston Texans at the Green Bay Packers. I knew this game was going to be close, but I'm not going to lie. The Texans underperformed a little bit to what I was thinking. Rushing was led by Joe Mixon, who's having an amazing year. I wouldn't sleep on him, having 25 carries for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns, putting the team on his back in this game. And then receiving was absolutely terrible, being the leading receiver was Dalton Schultz with 1 reception for 28 yards, and then the rest being absolutely dog shit. Not a single touchdown scored from any of the receivers. The defense did put up some good pressure, though. 3 total sacks in the day, 2 of them being from the terror duo, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. And then having 2 total interceptions, 1 being by Kalen Bullock and Neville Hewitt. So the Texans defense was pretty good in this game. One thing to note is that their kicker, Fairbairn, had 10 points on the day, so that really helped them stay close with the Packers in this game. Rushing was led by Josh Jacobs with 12 carries and 76 yards. Nobody else was close, so not a single rushing touchdown, but they got the job done decently. And receiving was led by Romeo Doubs with 8 receptions and 94 yards. And then 3 receiving touchdowns, 1 being by Tavion Wicks, Tucker Kraft, and Josh Jacobs. Jaden Reed having a really disappointing game for this game and fantasy, damn it. But all jokes aside, close game, but the Packers got on top, and they're both 5-2, and they're both, in my opinion, top 10 teams in the league right now. So that was great to see. So both teams sitting nicely right now. Next, you've got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. The Browns got Nick Chubb back for this game. I am so excited to see him play now. I've been missing watching him play. Now, if you look at the Browns here, they did struggle a little bit because the score was 21-14 Bengals. My bad. I should have said the score first. But yeah, the Browns struggled. Deshaun Watson had only 15 completions for 17 attempts, 128 yards on a single score. Rushing was led by Dorian Thompson-Robinson with only 3 carries for 44 yards. Rushing was really lousy, even for Nick Chubb, but he just came back, so I'm not going to give him too much of a hard time. He did get a rushing touchdown, so that's great to see. Looking at receiving, I was wondering who was going to step up other than David Njoku now that Amari Cooper's gone. The number one receiver today was Cedric Tillman with 8 receptions and 81 yards, while David Njoku had 10 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown. And if you look at the Browns defense, they had a total of 3 sacks, so they put up a decent amount of pressure. That's the most frustrating thing about the Browns, man. Their offense absolutely stinks, but the Browns defense is still great. Not as good as last year, but they're still great, and they're holding their team up to some games, trying to make it close, but the offense just can't get it done. Now, when you look at the Bengals, Joe Burrow had 15 completions for 25 attempts, 181 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns, having himself a solid game. Rushing was led by Chase Brown with 15 carries for 44 yards. Not a single score from rushing. Rushing was pretty lousy. And receiving was led by T. Higgins with 4 receptions and 82 yards and a touchdown. Jamar Chase had 5 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown. And then when you look at the defense, the Bengals defense had 4 total sacks in the day and having 2 interceptions, one of them being by Sam Hubbard, defensive lineman, so that's cool to see. So yeah, kind of a boring one, but the Bengals got it done, and now they're 3-4, trying to make their marvelous comeback from being, what was it, like 1-4 or something? I don't know. I think they'll have a winning record by the end of this year. Next, you've got the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. The Eagles winning 28-3. This game did not go what I was planning it. I thought this game was going to be a lot closer. I was hoping the Giants were going to win, but the Eagles got it done. The rushing was absolutely lousy, with the leading rusher being Tyrone Tracy Jr. with only 6 carries and 23 yards. And then the receiving, they got Malik Neighbors back, but still receiving was absolutely lousy. He was the leading receiver with 4 receptions and 41 yards, not a single score from the receiving. So the Giants overall was fucking lousy. Now, when you look at the Giants defense, they played absolutely great, having 5 total sacks, 2 of them being from sexy Dexy Lawrence. Man, he's been absolutely great like usual. But other than that, nothing to really go home about the Giants. They look terrible this game. Now, when you look at the Eagles, Jalen Hurts did not look good either. He has not been good all year, in my opinion. He only had 10 completions out of 14 attempts, 114 yards, and a touchdown. He's been really mediocre this year. Looking at rushing, it was led by Saquon Barkley, who absolutely put his team on his back with 17 carries, 176 yards, and a touchdown, being absolutely great against his former team. Jalen Hurts having 2 rushing touchdowns. And then the Eagles defense absolutely lit it up, having a total of 8 sacks. 2 of them being from So, yep, just usual ass kicking from the Eagles to the Giants. So, yep, some things changed, some stay the same. Finally getting to the afternoon games now. I'm sorry this video is taking so long. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders at the LA Rams, and this one was boring, but the Rams got the job done. Now, if you look at the Raiders, Gardner Minshew was terrible. He only had 15 completions for 34 attempts, 154 yards, and 3 interceptions, not a single touchdown. Man, he's been absolutely terrible this year. I was hyping him up in the offseason. Rushing was led by Alexander Madison, who was shockingly not that bad. He had 23 carries for 92 yards, not a single touchdown, but rushing-wise, he wasn't bad. And then receiving was led by Brock Bowers, who's having a great rookie year with 10 receptions and 93 yards. Not a single receiving touchdown, but yards-wise, he's been absolutely great in this game and this season. The Raiders defense only had 1 sack by you-know-who, Max Crosby, and only had 1 interception, that being from Nate Hobbs. Now, when you look at the Rams, Matthew Stafford having 14 completions out of his 23 attempts, 154 yards, and 1 pick. Not a really good day by both quarterbacks. Rushing was led by Kyren Williams, who has been great this year. 21 carries for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then receiving was led by Tyler Johnson with 4 receptions, 57 yards. I'm hoping to see if the Rams will get any of their star receivers back, because it's been kind of frustrating seeing these receivers only being the only options on the Rams, man. I miss Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Now, when you look at the Rams defense having only 2 sacks on the day, but they did have a total of 3 interceptions, 2 of them being from Jalen McCullough, having himself a good game. Man, I don't even know what's going on with, what's his face? Tre'Davious White, my bad. I was having a little bit of brain fart, but, man, I haven't seen him or heard of his name all year this year. I don't know if it's not showing on the stat sheet, so maybe he's hurt. I'm not sure, but he's having a pretty rough year, it sounds like. So, yeah, pretty boring one, but the Rams got the win. The Rams are 2-4. The Raiders are 2-5. The Raiders, man, they look rough, but hopefully the weeks get better for them. Moving on, you've got the Carolina Panthers at the Washington Commanders, and, man, what an ass-kicking by the Commanders. They've looked absolutely great in this season. But, yeah, the Panthers have been absolutely rough this year. If looking at the Panthers, Andy Dalton did not have a good game at all, only having 11 completions for 16 attempts, 93 yards, and 2 picks. He has not been great at all. Rushing-wise, I think that Chuba Hubbard's insanity run was starting to run out, only having 17 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. Still good, but not as crazy as before. Now, looking at receiving, their leading receiver was Jatavion Sanders with 6 receptions and 61 yards. Deontay Johnson not having a great game, as well as the other receivers and the whole team, to be exact. And then the Panthers defense couldn't do absolutely a thing, only having 1 sack, but that's the only thing they were able to do. They were getting their ass kicked the whole game. Looking at the Commanders, one thing you will notice is Jaden Daniels did get hurt. He injured his ribs, so hopefully it's not something serious. But Marcus Mariota stepped in, and he had 18 completions for 23 attempts, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had a pretty damn good game. Rushing was led by Brian Robinson Jr. with 12 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. He's been pretty underrated this year. And then receiving was led by Terry McLaurin with 6 receptions and 98 yards. Zach Ertz having a touchdown, and Ben Simmons having a touchdown. Wow, must have been backup tight end. And then looking at the Commanders' defense, they only had a total of 2 sacks, surprisingly. And having a total of 2 interceptions, one being by Dante Fowler Jr., and the other being by Emmanuel Forbes. Wow, crazy to see him do something. He's been terrible ever since he's been drafted. And credit to the Commanders' kicker, Austin Siebert, having 16 points. I had to pick him up in fantasy because my kickers were lacking, and he stepped up for the most part, even though I still lost. But I finally fixed my kicker problem thanks to him, and he might be my starter the whole year. He's been great, apparently, and I just didn't notice it. But, yep, great game by the Commanders. They are sitting 5-2, top of the NFC East right now, and the Panthers remain one of the worst teams in the NFL right now. Next, you've got the Super Bowl rematch, the Kansas City Chiefs at the San Francisco Niners, and, man, the Niners just continue to disappoint and get injured this year. That's how it's been. Get injured and disappoint. Now, when you look at Brock Purdy, he had a pretty bad game. Like, he had 17 completions for 37 attempts, 212 yards, and 3 picks, not a single touchdown. That is not like him to see. Jordan Mason was surprisingly a little lousy. Jordan Mason being the leading rusher with 14 carries and 58 yards, not a single touchdown from him. Brock Purdy had 2 rushing touchdowns, trying to be the next Jalen Hurts. And receiving was led by George Kittle, having 6 receptions for 92 yards. Brandon Ayuk tearing his ACL, having a really bad knee injury, so that sucks to see, even though he's been absolutely terrible this year. One thing I will say, even though the stat-wise wasn't great, Ricky Pearsall finally played his first game of the season, being shot in the offseason, so I'd love to see that. I'd love to see him playing again, so it's great that he's been able to play. So great for him. And the defense, despite being a little lousy, they had a total of 2 sacks and a total of 2 interceptions, one being by Kala Davis and the other being by Deminor Lenore, who's having a pretty underrated season. And then you got the Niners having their 3rd straight kicker, Anders Carlson, having 6 points. And then you look at the Chiefs. They continue to not look the greatest, but, hey, they're still winning. Patrick Mahomes having 16 completions out of 27 attempts, 154 yards, and 2 picks on a single score. Not that great of a game, but, hey, he's still winning. Looking at rushing, it was led by Kareem Hunt with 22 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been great. Mahomes having a rushing touchdown, and McCole Hartman having a rushing touchdown. And receiving really didn't do a damn thing. It was really all rushing. But the leading receiver was Noah Gray with 4 receptions and 66 yards. Nobody else did a damn thing. And the Chiefs' defense only had a total of 1 sack and had 2 picks. So, yeah, not the prettiest game, but the Chiefs got the job done, and they are now the only undefeated team in the league at 6-0. And, yeah, as anybody but a Chiefs fan, it's been kind of like a little bit frustrating to watch. Moving on, we got the Sunday Night Football game. It was the New York Jets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And while the Steelers, despite the doubts I had with Russell Wilson starting, he looked absolutely great. And the Steelers looked great, putting up 37 points. That's not a thing I've seen from the Steelers in a while, so that's great to see from the Steelers. Now, looking at the Jets, Aaron Rodgers struggling this year. He had 24 completions out of 39 attempts, 276 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Not that great. Now, when you look at rushing, Breece Hall had 12 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. Pretty lousy, but at least he got a score. And receiving was led by Breece Hall with 6 receptions and 103 yards. That's kind of crazy. Garrett Wilson having 5 receptions for 61 yards, having a blatant drop leading to an interception. So that was weird to see. And despite Devontae Adams playing his first game as a Jet, was pretty lousy. 3 receptions for 30 yards, was not having a great game. And fun fact, he lost to the Steelers 2 weeks in a row, so that's kind of funny. And then you look at the Jets defense, they were really lousy this whole game, but one thing you will see is having 1 sack being by Will McDonald, who's having a pretty good second year just because his rookie year was pretty bad, so it's good to see that he's been finally playing well. Now, when you look at the Steelers, Russell Wilson, man, I was saying this dude was washed. I said he was like a terrible decision to have starting in this game. And he just came out and lit it up, having 19 completions for 29 attempts, 264 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He looked great in this game. Rushing was led by Najee Harris with 21 carries and 102 yards and a touchdown, having a great game. Russell Wilson having a rushing touchdown as well. Receiving was led by George Pickens with 5 receptions and 111 yards and a touchdown. He was great in this game. Van Jefferson having a receiving touchdown. And then the Steelers defense being great as always, having 1 sack and 2 interceptions, both being by Beanie Bishop Jr. What a great game by the Steelers. And the Jets, man, they are struggling this year. They are 2-5 and probably not the start they were thinking to have. But the Steelers, they're 5-2. Sitting tied with the Ravens on top, and man, that's going to be a great fight to see who's going to be the best in that division. The Steelers, man, they look pretty damn good. Next, we got Monday Night Football. We've got the Baltimore Ravens against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and man, this game did not go as planned. I thought the Bucs were going to win, but realistically, despite the score being 41-31 Ravens, the Ravens got kicked the Bucs' ass realistically. Looking at the Bucs, Baker Mayfield struggled a little bit, having 31 completions for 45 attempts, 370 yards. Great for yards per se, but had 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. So not his best game, but yet he still threw pretty decently, so not too bad. And receiving was led by Kay Otten with 8 receptions for 100 yards. Rashad White having 2 receiving touchdowns, having 6 receptions for 71 yards. Mike Evans getting his 100th 100th touchdown with only 1 reception for 5 yards. After that, he got a hamstring injury, so that sucks to see. But he's been absolutely amazing this year, so hopefully it's not something long-term. And then you got Chris Godwin with 7 receptions for 65 yards, and he had a really bad ankle injury. He dislocated his ankle, so hopefully it's not something like season-ending. I don't think it will, but hopefully not. He's been absolutely great this year, and he's beloved by a lot of fans, including me. I love Chris Godwin. So hopefully he's not out long-term because that would suck. Looking at the Bucs defense, they had a total of 2 sacks, one of them being by Antoine Winfield. So he's been absolutely great this year. Not a single pick, but Antoine Winfield being underrated. Now, looking at the Ravens, Lamar Jackson having an MVP-like game. 17 completions out of 22 attempts, 281 yards, and 5 touchdowns. What a great game. Derrick Henry was led rushing and throwing those wash allegations out the door. 15 carries for 169 yards. He's been absolutely amazing this year. Receiving was led by Rashad Bateman for 4 receptions and 121 yards and a touchdown. Justice Hill had a receiving touchdown. Mark Andrews had 2 receiving touchdowns. Finally seeing him do something. And Derrick Henry having a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Ravens defense, they had a total of 3 sacks and 2 interceptions, both being by Marlon Humphrey. He had an amazing game. He was able to read the receivers left and right this whole game. And then let's give credit to Justin Tucker having 11 points, helping the Ravens out in this win. And yeah, the Ravens did their job. They are now 5-2, being one of the elite in the AFC. And yeah, the Bucs, they've been great, but they haven't been able to beat the really good ones other than the Lions. So let's see if the Bucs can have a bounce back week next week. And then the final game of the week, we had the Los Angeles Chargers against the Arizona Cardinals. This was locked on ESPN Plus, so I couldn't watch it. But looking at the score only being 17-15, but the Cardinals winning, it didn't seem like there was much to watch. Looking at the Chargers, despite not having a single touchdown, he did play pretty good. 27 completions out of 39 attempts and 349 yards. He did throw the ball a lot. Rushing was pretty lousy, but the leading rusher was J.K. Dobbins with 14 carries for 40 yards on a single score. And receiving was led by Will Disley with 8 receptions and 81 yards and not a single touchdown on receiving either. The Chargers defense was also lousy, only having 1 interception being by Tier Tart. So you're asking yourself, how did the Chargers put up 15 points? Looking at the Cardinals, Kyler Murray was okay. He had 14 completions out of 26 attempts, 145 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. Looking at rushing, you have the leading rusher was James Conner with 19 carries for 101 yards. Kyler Murray having a rushing touchdown, looking absolutely great, having 6 carries for 64 yards. He's been really good rushing this year. And then leading receiving was Trey McBride with 5 receptions and 51 yards. 1 receiving touchdown by Greg Dortch. And then looking at the Cardinals defense, having a total of 3 sacks, nothing really else. And yep, the Cardinals, despite not doing the greatest, had a walk-off kick to win the game. And now they are sitting 3-4, pretty solid in the division. And then the Chargers are now 3-3. So not the greatest game to end it, but hey, the Cardinals won. And that's it for all my reactions, guys. I'm so sorry this video was so long, but again, I am new to this, so hey, we can only improve through time. So don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so when I post, you will not miss a single video. I hope to get big on this channel so more people can enjoy it, so I can get a lot more opinions on these. Because I don't want to be the only one, right? But that's it for today. I'll see you on the next video. I'm Logan Sharon. I can't get the glasses on. I'll see you next time.